Daamid ja härrad, head sõbrad, tere tulemast Rootsi saatkonna Tallinnas. Ladies and gentlemen, very welcome to the Swedish embassy here in Tallinn. My name is Mikael Eriksson. I'm the current ambassador here to Estonia. And I am delighted, honored, and slightly intimidated to be here in front of you all today. We have a very tight schedule, a full program, and I will not take much of your time. There are so many speakers here who have a lot more knowledge and substance to talk about than me, but I will just say a few words of introduction. First, I would just say that the rationale behind calling this conference is really to celebrate the tremendous development that we've seen in Europe and of course in Estonia over the past 30 years. And also, of course, the close cooperation that has taken place between our two countries in particular, but I would say also, of course, in the larger Nordic-Baltic region over these 30 or so years. And we wanted to celebrate this on the occasion of two anniversaries. One being the fact that 30 years ago, in November and December, it happened twice actually, the first Swedish mission here in Tallinn was opened. It was a branch office which actually reported, of course, to the Consul General in Leningrad at the time, because this was before independence. And the second reason is that 25 years ago, thanks to the generosity of the Estonian government and state, we had the opportunity to move into this building. This magnificent palace from the 17th century built by a Swedish representative, Axel von Rosen, or Axel Rose as we call him. Just a few words on the program. We have built it on three pillars today. And I will hasten to add that I will have a few words also to say about what is not included in the program. The three pillars is, first of all, an overall view, an overview of the political context in which things happened before and after independence. And we have an eminent panel to discuss that, and there will also be a commentary from the field, so to say. The second pillar is to discuss a little bit about how civil societies work together, and we will take one case in particular, and that's cooperation between student unions, which I think will illustrate in a very good way how these processes happened. And the third pillar then is defense and military cooperation. And we'll come back to all of these three later on. We will also have the possibility later on tonight for those who so wish, to screen two movies which are relevant to what we are discussing. First one being The Freedom Key of Estonia was in Sweden, by Johan Are. And then, of course, the film Rodeo, which I think many of you have seen already. If you haven't, I can very much recommend it. It's worth seeing. One final point on what is not included. Of course, this was a hugely complex process, independence. And there are so many aspects which we have not been able to cover. One in particular, which I would like to mention, is of course the macroeconomic transformation from a Soviet command economy to a Western market-based economy. That was of course one of the most important changes. And we simply had to make a choice, and we decided that that was beyond the scope of this seminar, but rest assured that that's not an aspect that we have forgotten. It was and is a hugely important aspect, very much I think also thanks to Prime Minister Mart Laar, who was the driving force behind this. Before ending and before handing over the floor to other speakers, I will just first of all say a huge thank you to my colleagues and staff at the Swedish Embassy. They have done a tremendous job in putting this together. We have been reminding ourselves that, remember, this is not the Lennart Meri conference. But even so, with our modest ambition, there have been hundreds of small details to attend to, and I would just like to say a huge thank you to the staff of the Swedish Embassy for this. Two practical points. There is a guest book outside. For those of you who haven't signed it yet, we would very much like you to do so. And the very last point is that we have actually produced a little bit of a gift to all of you, which is in the form of a coffee mug. So make sure that you get one before you leave today. With that, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sweden, Ann Linde, who will say a few words of welcome. And I know, and I will just say this in advance, that her schedule is very tight today, so she might have to leave early, but if she does, you know why. It is a very tight schedule for a foreign minister. But please, Madam Linde, welcome up on stage.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for putting this very important seminar together with your staff. Ladies and gentlemen, when we celebrate 30 years of Swedish diplomatic presence in Estonia, we celebrate 30 years of a reunited Europe. The courage and determination shown by the Estonian people, together with the Latvian and Lithuanian friends, was crucial to regaining your country's sovereignty and independence. Perhaps the Baltic Way, Baltiket, was the strongest symbol of this, and together with the fall of the Berlin Wall, perhaps one of the strongest symbols we have of the will of Europeans to live in democracy and freedom. As a neighboring state, Sweden had a strong interest to follow developments in this side of the Baltic Sea and to assist and support our Estonian colleagues and the Estonian people as best as we could. So in the same year as Baltiket, in 1989, Sweden opened a diplomatic mission in Tallinn. Estonia was not yet free, and the mission had to be established as a branch office under the Swedish consulate in Leningrad. This office was inaugurated by Foreign Minister Sten Andersson on November the 8th, and then opened to the public on December the 11th. Today is also an occasion to celebrate 25 years anniversary of this magnificent embassy. It was built by the Swedish governor, I like that, Axel Rose, in 1674, and inaugurated as an embassy by Foreign Minister Margareta of Ugglas and President Lennart Meri in the summer of 1994. Thanks to the generosity of the government of Estonia, Sweden has been given the possibility to rent this wonderful house, so full of Swedish history, for still many years to come. Back in 1989 and in the early 1990s, the relationship between Estonia and Sweden was an expression of solidarity and support from one party to another. Over time, it has evolved into today's truly mutual relationship between two equal partners. Our political and economic ties are strong. We trade with each other and we invest in our respective economies. We are close partners in the European Union. We share the same commitment to a strong rule-based international order and European security order, based on respect for international law and respect for human rights. Sweden and Estonia are both among the most advanced digital societies, and the potential to work together to create an integrated and sustainable digital economy in the Nordic region is enormous. Ladies and gentlemen, we go back a long time together. We know that a Swedish-speaking population has been present on the west coast and on the island of Estonia at least in the 13th century, but probably even longer than that. For 150 years, in the 16th and 17th century, Estonia was an integral part of the Swedish kingdom. Tallinn, or Reval, was the third most important town of the kingdom. In the early 20th century, Swedish volunteers fought with Estonians, Finns, and Danes, and others to defend Estonia's freedom. In the 1940s, Sweden became the refuge for thousands of Estonians fleeing from occupation and suppression. Allow me to end by saying that the role played by Estonian intellectuals and artists who lived and worked in Sweden during Soviet occupation was truly significant. Ilon Veiklam illustrated many of Astrid Lindgren's most beloved books, merging our understanding of what it is to be a child in Sweden with her own memories of her hometown of Haapsalu. Edvard Turbin wrote wonderful music from his Swedish exile. And perhaps the most influential Estonian poet of the 20th century, Marie Undo, fled to Sweden in 1944 and lived in Sweden for the rest of her life. Marie Undo wrote poems which were political statements of the unbending will of the Estonian people to regain their independence. In one of her most well-known poems, Christmas Greeting 1941, she asked the desperate question, can we, I wonder, ever use our minds again for sake of joy and happiness? Thankfully, the answer to that question is a strong yes. Thank you.